All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Now we are towards the end of the day 2 of the Unconference with an amazing speaker, global thought leader, traveler, community evangelist, and a product quality insurer. This is how you know how to create building, products. That's with us, Sowmya Sridharamurthy. And Sowmya, I might have done just a bit about introduction, and so even before we start with the conversation, we want to know about you from you, and then of course you would want to jump into your session. I request everyone to hold their thoughts and questions. Please put them on the chat. Please be on mute, so that just like just like Sowmya, we all can say hi, we can't hear you, show your you are on mute kind of thing. And so yeah, Sowmya, over to you. That's it. Yeah, I go on mute now.
So cool. Thanks, Deepti. So I have or I have put up a time to talk a lot about myself. So I would definitely like to use my PPT to show how gloriously good I am. Just bear with me. Okay. So I hope you guys can see my screen. And then we're all good. And then let me sort it out. I have all issues when it comes to sharing the screen.
Today it's not there.
Okay, cool. So I finally found the presentation mode. So today I'll be talking about fostering API testing productivity. And I do want to stress a little bit more about low-code tools, but that's not the entire intention of this talk, but it's mostly about embracing the API testing and my views about it. So let me go ahead to talk about all myself. I love this slide everywhere I go. And again, hi, I am Sowmya Sridharamurthy. I am basically from Bangalore. I've been in this industry for nearly 15 years. I started my career with SAP back in Bangalore. So if you would love to catch up with me, you can find me in LinkedIn, in Twitter. I also run a very active meetup group virtually. The idea is to give a very safe, non-judgmental learning environment for everybody. We are all humans. We all come with our own perceptions, and I would love to embrace every perception and ideas behind it, good, bad. There's nothing like that. So everything is gray. So I run this APN's meetup. Feel free to join. It's a free platform. And I do write technical articles to various platforms. However, whenever I find time, I'll just try and put something into my blog. If you have time, do have a look. I am also recognized as a Postman Supernova and Browser Stack champion. For work and living and earning, I work as an engineering manager at Lito. We have two teams. One team is in Netherlands and the other team is in USA. We are a digital SaaS company, so we serve creative minds. So pretty much can recognize ourselves as a product-based company. If I have to talk about the sector, if I'm not working, I'm heavily into running. I run around the canals of Amsterdam everywhere. I do gardening. I have a lot of flower pots, plants, and yeah, I love gardening. What else I do? Yeah, I'm a mom of 7, so pretty much on foot every day. So kind of like a busy lifestyle. So that's about me. Now, let's dive into a very serious topic of the API testing and the productivity. So the name may a little bit give away that, oh, okay, I may come here and talk about, let's calculate productivity. Let's see how we can translate it to our numbers, or how we can push people to give more output with the time that they're spending in office or in front of the system. No, I want to address a step behind, which is about embracing API testing and the challenges that goes behind it, the stigma that is attached to it, how APIs are cursed from the natural nature of it. And I want to address every aspect of it. And then is when the topic of productivity it gets translated to. So we have the hurdles right in the beginning of the adoption of API itself. Not per se adoption, but API testing adoption. So again, setting the stage right. Like I said, we are all humans with beautiful brains, supernatural powers. We gain data, get signals, process it in our own ways, and we build our own perception against something. Now, if I had to present a story, it is important that I have to set a stage right by telling what I see productivity as, correct? So when we talk about productivity, I simply pull in an English description from the Oxford Dictionary, rate of output per unit of input. Great. So if I am working in any manufacturing sector or in a tangible sector where we are developing or manufacturing glasses or pens or handbags or shoes, it's easier for me sitting in a leadership position or a managerial position and say, okay, I gave this much amount of raw resources, these many number of people, these many number of workers of PD, and then these machines running for these many hours, and these are the finished goods, and translate it to the numbers and finances and all those things. It's easier because it's visual, you can see, you can sense, and it's easier to calculate. But now if I have to bring the same analogy to software testing or software development, now, as long as I don't have a tool where I can plug something into human brain, expose what's running in somebody's brain and actually see how productive it is, I'll not be able to find out, are they really productive or they're not productive? So now it's a whole issue and the ball game is very different. So the analogy is never eye to eye. It's like, it's never apple to apple. I can't say somebody wrote 10,000 lines of code, so he's more productive vis-a-vis someone who wrote 200 lines of code. Or some tester found 50 bugs a day while other tester found only 2 bugs a day. So that's never a matter of productivity, though I have seen teams notoriously doing it, such a filthy way of converting to numbers. It's never accepted and should not be accepted. So in every conference that I go, I ensure to reach out to the people to tell this is a very bad practice that you have to scrap. We don't work as a manufacturing industry, but we work with people. And the way we define productivity should be entirely different than what we try to bring in from the waterfall model. Like, in a regression, I ran 50 test cases, so I'm productive today. Or I ran 150 test cases and I'm productive today. So that's not how it works with the software testing industry. Having said that, I want to funnelize it towards the API. So when it comes to the API, like I said, APIs are cursed. What do I mean by cursed? At any sunny day, I approach any software tester and I give them an option, you know what, you can test my applications through UI, check all the business functions that is possible, and then automate it. Or you can test the same application using the APIs, the same business functions through APIs, and then build automation. Within a second, they choose the UI test and the UI approach and the automation. Why? It's pretty simple, right? It's because the application interacts. You can see, you can sense, you can feel. And it talks to you, the application talks to you, you can see what is happening right in front of a screen. But when you open an API, it gives you a cold stare. It's like, just don't come to me. And then all the cryptic codes and then error messages and some status codes, I don't know what's happening. And then you have to understand what HTTPS is. You have to understand how the protocol works. I mean, there's so many technicalities that goes behind it. There is never a proactive approach towards API testing, if you see by and large. So some stigmas that's attached to it that I would like to express today is, first one is a technical anxiety, like I said. So leave the candidates who are professionally trained from the computer science and the IT background. Everybody, not just them, everybody feels technically, challenged. Okay, so this is a lot of code I may have to work with. There's nothing that I can see, I can relate to, and I don't know what's happening in the back end. I don't understand, it's too much technical, so let me not even go towards it. So that's like the first way of even pushing yourself out of it. So nobody comes. The second one is training and development. There is absolutely nothing great happening when it comes to the training and development, especially in the API testing arena. Why I say this? You see any Udemy videos or any, I shouldn't be naming, I'm sorry about it. You can see any learning platforms for that matter. And whatever we see is mostly shown like a testing tires in ideal condition. Like, I have a static code, I call this get request, and this is a response, and this is how you execute API. No, that's a good start point. But when a person looks at that video, comes back to his seat, his or her seat to execute it, then they face a whole gamut of other challenges. There is load balancers, there is a firewall, there are authorization involved, and there's a payload structure, and there can be XML format, JSON format. and it gets overwhelming, and then the person will just give away. So when the training and development is actually happening within the team, the leaders within the team leaders or the managers have to ensure that the training that happens is actually translated into the work somehow. Either you do it through some platforms or through your internal training systems. There should be enough emphasis to be given in the production level of implementation of tests for the testers, and not just showing some model in the showroom and saying, you know what, you can do this. So just see this and then you can do. I still remember my first day of ABAP training, the 3 days of intense ABAP training. And when I went back to desk to implement an RFC, I was like, I don't know. So that's the case of training and development, which we really have to address. The third one is a tool. You can see how excited I am. So the third one is a tool, lack of supportive tools. So let me bring up this dirty little topic. I have seen in multiple organizations, myself, I have gone through this. When we ask for a budget for testing specifically, we have been rejected. There's like, can you just work with what developers already using? Do we really need this tool? I mean, I can see all faces. I mean, it's funny. Yeah, you're engaging with me, but that's good, but that's not going to solve my team's problem, right? So provide the financial aid and budgeting required for your team, support them with the necessary tools. Sometimes we definitely can pull off things with the developers' tools. That's fine, but it not always works. So we may need our specific tools to address the situation at hand, then support them with that, which is missing right now in a larger scale. And lastly is a collaboration. It's even more dirtier if I talk. So I have been in places, I have experienced it, where when we develop API, when we talk about it, or let's say a product owner brings in a requirement and he says, okay, this is what customers are doing. And then everything goes hush, hush. And somewhere in some meeting room, some technical architect and some developer doing juk, and something happens. I don't know what is even happening. And finally they develop something and they push the code. Maybe you can test this. Why do that? Collaborate with your testers, include them in every aspect of the API development, and then, take them along. Now, this is one side of the story. The other side of the story? Oh, this is too technical. I don't know the programming. Let me not even be there. They will sort it out. Let them give me for testing. I'll test. So this is like, mutually exclusion is happening. So we have to address this from both the sides. The development community have to embrace the QA and collaborate with them, give them all the information. And QA is also, it's okay even if you're not understanding anything programmatically, just be there. Your presence matters. Maybe first meeting you don't understand, second you don't, finally you start picking up and putting the puzzles together and you understand what's actually is happening. Simply your presence can change so many things. So I highly recommend people to just collaborate with the developers and not just get excluded from when it comes to the API development and testing collaboration. So these were the stigma that I wanted to address. When we have these many problems, we have to fix this before even talking about productivity. Because if you talk about this, the engine is in standstill. It's not moving. So you have to get the engine moving and then make it work and then optimize it and then talk about productivity. So you see where I'm coming. So now the next is when we talk about teams and testing, it is a shared responsibility. We all agree to it. There is no challenge against this. But I want to address from a team perspective, from various level perspective. So if I want an automobile to run as fast as possible, to cover as long distance as possible, it is not enough that I only tweak the engine. It is important that I see if my wheels are good enough, of a good quality, the rubber, the air, I don't know if I'm using the wrong technical words, pardon me, maybe the chassis and the aerodynamics that goes along with it, the structure of the car, the design, and everything that's involved in it has to be tweaked and made to work as efficient as possible so that the car can be as fast as possible. So that's how we see. Same is organization. When we talk about API testing, let me start with the core of the organization. The core of the organization is the development team. So where the challenge that we see first is a skill. I'll tell you, for nearly 7.5 to 8 years, I worked in India. And then for more than 3.5 years, I worked in UK, and then I moved to Netherlands for last 2.5 years. In all my journey, I tell you, we had to work with the available resources. Okay. So when it comes to the testing, it's a very kind domain where we embrace people from all aspects of the society. There is no restriction whether you have to do engineering itself. While being a developer may still command for a certain level of restriction bars and so many things. But when it comes to software testing, it's a very kind domain where it has given life and career to so many people, and you can just hop in any time as long as you show enthusiasm to be part of it. And I just love that part about software testing. So, but having said that, the additional part of it is also that we have to get skilled for the required tasks that happens within the software development team. So there is two ways you do. One, you get trained for it and then you come, or you learn it on the job. In either ways, skill plays a very important role. But right now what we see, because there is the stigma, there is no much of intention or enthusiasm displayed towards learning API testing or even going towards or nearing to the API. If there's an option, I will still test the business functions through UI, which is fine. I am not eliminating the testing through UI. It is required 100%. But the love that we show towards that should also be translated towards the other side of the spectrum and embrace the APIs equally lovingly and then contribute towards it. So that's the emphasis that I'm trying to draw. The second part is the tools and support. What do I mean by this? Like in my organization, for example, we have not been using anything until now for the API testing. We have APIs which communicate between microservices. We have APIs which is given as an open API for our customers. And then we have some partner APIs where we work with Drupal or any other integration platforms. So we have all sorts of APIs that we work with. But if you see, it was usually neglected. And then there was a slow entry of a Postman workflow that I introduced to the team, where they can actually interact and see how these are interacting, what types of data is passing. It was easier for me to translate the entire business scenario for the testers into the flow. So I'm not in a position to say it is beautifully working, but I'm in a position to say people are embracing it, accepting it, and at least a first step, baby steps are taken towards implementing the API tests with interest. So having the tools and the support is very important apart from the skills. The third layer is the process and the rate of delivery. How does this even matter, Sowmya? We are talking about API testing. Why are you talking about process and the rate of delivery? Let me quote you. I have a product owner who talks to his customer saying, you know what, if you can give me this open API by end of this month, I will able to develop some feature on top of it and, I can deliver it to my customers. And this is how the chain builds. And the product owner comes back to the development team, pressurizes the development team, we need it by the end of this month. Keeping the technicalities and the limitations aside, the development team somehow wants to get this done because there is a pressure from the product owner. They try to develop, and there's a whole level of compromise that is happening when it comes to the software quality or the testing. And then we reach or we deliver to the production system. So all we are doing is meeting the deadline, but we are not setting the frequency of oscillation within the team. So as a leader, for me, it is important that my team oscillates in the same frequency. Developers, testers, product owners, sales, everyone have to oscillate in the same frequency. That's when we can work together hand in hand. Otherwise, it's just the compromise of the entire process. Having a strong process is very important for a software development team, and the rate of delivery drives it. So as an organization, sitting in the leadership team, one has to decide, okay, come what may, this is our delivery process. This is our deadline. This is how we are going to move ahead. And come what pressure, this is our regular delivery cycle. This is what we're going to follow. So that helps us to oscillate in the same frequency, irrespective of the pressure. And we know what has to be embraced within the team. Finally, is a leadership involvement. This is the last. I've not seen any teams where leadership actually comes down to the team to talk about what is happening, how you guys are developing, what are the challenges that you have, do you need any support from us? I hardly see any from the leadership team actually having these conversations with their development team. They somehow sit somewhere far and then start to realize, assuming that, okay, if if the deployments are happening, I guess they should be working, they're receiving the salary, and things should be good. There is no voice that's been raised or anything, so everything is okay, so I don't have to bother about. I highly discourage that. It's very important for the leadership team to involve with the development team, have a regular conversations with them, try to know what problems they have. They don't have to know about the technical issues, they still have to know about the human part of it, and that's what drives most of the software testing and development arena. So that's about layering. So you know what is the API stigma that we have and how the stigma can be approached through these layers of tweaking. And then we will see the next, the DIC challenge. I am DIC'd. So what is this DIC challenge? So I kind of coined it just to gain some attention, otherwise it has no meaning. And don't make a meaning out of it. Right, so when it comes to the DIC challenge, let me tell you, so D is documentation, clarity, involvement, know-how, and know-why. Now, I'm even more tunneling it to specific to the API. We saw the organization level, we saw the team level, skills level, and then I want to now focus specifically towards the API, how API itself is posing a challenge for the software testing and testing as a whole in various teams. So let's go ahead. And this is one thing I kind of love, that unicorn in the middle. So you see, I have tried to portray the different perspectives that's been thought, assumed, or presumed within the team. I sit somewhere and I think, okay, what I think it can be. So it is an API which gets the asset ID. Okay, it gets an asset ID. That's what I think. Then what developer think it is? Okay, I had to send this APIs. It will give me the list of APIs along with the IDs, and then some filtering options and sorting, or the pagination or something, and then I have to do that. And then there is a product owner who has a different assumption of what he needs. He needs a set of assets along with the details, along with the images, and maybe some references and whatnot. And then there is a customer who had asked something which got translated into different assumptions, which I just addressed. So, and only when you club all these things and collaborate or communicate with each other is when you reach that unicorn world, which doesn't exist in most of the teams, where you clearly understand from the technical aspect of it, what has to be implemented, how the response body should be, how the payload structure is, what should be your protocol and message status and codes and everything that is related to it. And then also from the business aspect perspective, when this should be delivered, what is the impact when we deliver late, what are the technical limitations and how I can sell these technical limitations, what are the security issues, how I can discuss about the performance of this API. There are so many things. It's never addressed. It's never spoken about. One, because of lack of time. Second, because of lack of education. So having clarity is very important. Second is the documentation. So this is the most dreaded part in most organizations. And the super and a famous reason given to me, I don't have time. The time that I invest to do documentation, I would rather invest in writing 10 lines of code, which is, more productive than doing a documentation. And then they give a lame reason that Agile says to eliminate documentation, which is wrong. Agile never says remove documentation. Agile only emphasizes that remove the waste, which is not required. But API documentation is not a waste. It is highly important, not just for the development team, but also to the wider part as an organization, and especially to the people who sit in the leadership roles like me, where I have to always kind of hire and replace people. For me, the knowledge transfer, onboarding, and everything matters. And for the testing team, they need the initial knowledge. Like Marath rightly mentioned, you go into exploration mode, you explore things and build your perception, build your story, and connect with the application. But even to do that, you need to start somewhere. You have to understand what this is doing, what is expected out of it. And then you start exploring your way into the application and finding different parts of it, covering the entire health of the application, right? You bring in your creativeness into the testing. So and how should this documentation be? As I always say, it should address both the business and the technical aspect of it. You have to tell who is using it, in what frequency they use this, what type of APIs these are. Are they partner APIs? Are they REST APIs? What kind of APIs? And What's the tech stack that we are using to support this? What is an acceptable performance markup? This is a big thing that is missing right now when we talk about APIs. They only say, okay, 200 status okay means it's working. 404 means there is an error, which is great. But when you're talking about an upload scenario, download scenario, or a create scenario, or a delete scenario in a bulk, you also have to discuss very openly what is the acceptable limit of performance that you do for this particular API. And especially when you have a chaining of APIs or the calls of APIs that you're doing as a stack, as an end-to-end scenario, you should know how long that you would like to support as a team. And this is something that is like missing at the greater lens in development as well as in testing. As well as when it comes to the technical aspect, you have to talk about the payload structure, the types of data that is supported, this status code and status messages, which we all know, the maximum and the minimum load that we support for each call. And there is no single rule. It depends on every applications, every structure or the system architecture. There are many aspects that goes behind. That is the reason why it makes all the more important to note all this down as a part of your documentation and help not just the testers, but also the wider team. Setup and transactional data, things like that. So this is about documentation. So I address documentation more seriously for the APIs. Involvement. This is something that I want to emphasize, and I want everyone here to take it back along with them. As a QA, please do the brute force when it comes to API testing. See, UI testing, or what happens when you talk about business features or functions, everything is written as a part of an acceptance criteria. But when you're talking about API, somehow everything becomes blank. Nothing is written, no business scenario written, no user requirements written, no acceptance criteria written, nothing is written. So it's just one endpoint will be mentioned, or maybe some verbs, whether it's get, put, post, whatever it is, or maybe some environment names, maximum, nothing else. And like I already mentioned, QAs are never involved right from the inception. They are brought into the API testing only at the fag end of the development. So if you are a passive tester who are waiting for the information to be fed, I emphasize you to do the brute force constructively, not like a kind of a fight, but brute force constructively. Make your way into every place where this API discussions are happening, whether it's a business discussions or it's a transactional discussions, technical discussions. Just be there. Make yourself available. Do not self-doubt yourself already that anyways I have nothing to contribute, so why waste 30 minutes in the meeting? You may not have anything to contribute for the first 2 meetings, but you start slowly making sense of it. There's something starts sticking within your brains. You go back, you get some keywords, you search about it, you start connecting with it. You want or not, when you start associating with it, you start slowly getting into it. You start with the hate, and then it becomes like kind of a love to you, and you start slowly growing towards it. So make your way, apply the brute force constructively, make yourself in all the ways wherever this API things is happening, and just be there. Just be there. Later we'll see whether you're adding something or not. That's like the later thing. So just be there, right? I guess I did enough emphasis of just telling, just be there, just be there. Okay. And then the last one is know why and know how. So this is pretty much the standard one. You should know what tech stacks they're using, why they're using this. Constructively challenge them. Why you're using Java? Why not C#? Why you're using Node.js? Why not something else? So it helps you to, I don't want to use the groom, but it helps you to refine yourself as a person, as a software tester, where you're growing from a customer approach, from the user approach perspective, and from also the technical approach, where it's like an inside out. You can understand the application inside out and not just lingering over the UI like a butterfly and then just testing few buttons. No. So this helps you in a longer run, not immediately, but as a longer run, when you grow, you plan to grow in this role for a long, it is very important. So you know how and know why. The business and the technical, both should go hand in hand. Now that's the DIC, right? So let me go to the next one, which is API test maturity. This is a very interesting topic, which I have put together myself. what do I mean by API test maturity? Like every other aspect of the organization where you have automation test maturity, testing test maturity, and all those things. API test maturity is something that I would like to introduce. Maybe there is some which I don't know, but this is something of my own thought process at what I have observed over the years. You can identify where you stand from the API testing maturity perspective. The spectrum ranges anywhere between completely absent to everything on spot. Well, everything on spot is a unicorn palace, right? So that's not where we are hitting. So we should be somewhere between 1 to 4. At least we try and aim to reach 3 or 4 at some point, and we improve the maturity and then optimize to reach 5. So usually the abstracted level or the absent level you'd see in startups or the neo startups. The time is a challenge. Everything has to reach the market with the less amount of time. The CEO sits right next to you. The CTO sits right next right to you, and then they keep raising, okay, it's done. Can we release it? Can we bring the customer? Can we show the demo? So the rest all takes back seat. So there is no test. There is absence of tools. Sometimes these organizations don't even have testers. So it's a very different scenario. But there are also small and medium enterprises where you can see this happening, and there are APIs, but testers are not even aware that such a thing exists. So if you're in such a space, or your team is in such a space, try them to push towards the limited level, at least where something is happening, like some unit tests are there. At least the developers are executing it. I'm not saying this is the best. Keep the ball rolling. So once you're in there, push the ball to the next code, which is like the collaborate. You collaborate with your developers. They write their unit tests. You collaborate with them with the unit test. This is where we are right now at 𝐼𝐻𝐻. So where I'm highly encouraging my testers to collaborate with the developers to do API testing. It's okay if you don't know how to do, you don't have to be away from it. But when they write unit tests, sit with them. This is something even Marat mentions, which is a pair programming or pair testing. So this is something similar to it, that when they do unit tests, just sit with them, do a chat about what scenarios they have implemented, brainstorm something that's missing, add your view on top of it, or you say, maybe you can add this as well. So I feel this is important, and get this added. So you don't have to sit and code. The developer will do it, and still your thought process is getting translated as a part of the test, and it's getting tested somehow. And again, because we are collaborating over this part, it's a shared execution. And most of the time, this happens on your local systems because of the lack of supportive tools or technologies. But like I said, collaboration has started. There is something is moving, something is happening. If you find yourself in this team, try to push your team towards getting organized. That means you have unit tests running, you are actively participating in adding in the tests. Now is a time where you can bring in the end-to-end tests. Try to automate stuff. Automation does not mean finding a new bugs. There is a very bad notion in the market, and I want to take this platform to tell automation is not the thing to unearth the bugs. They are not meant for mining bugs. They are just meant to do health checks. They're there to do the health checks of of the application, of whatever has been already delivered. You're just ensuring it's working as is, even with a new code introduction. So it's not a bug mining activity, but it's mostly like a health check activity. So in the meanwhile, if it is not working as expected, and if it fails, you're good enough to raise a bug. So yeah, where was I? Organize. So push your team to organize themselves by doing shared execution, have a common tools, bring in the operations support, identify the process so that, you know, at regular intervals, you do this, you do that, and you know how you handle each bugs. And everything that is surrounding it. So that is organized. This is fairly mature model. It's not completely mature, but at least this is a good place to be. And at least if you're in 4, you know something is working and it's going to help. And finally is the unicorn world, which is a team driven where everything is on spot. I would love to see this team that's working like that, but where every unit test is done, every end-to-end tests are done, all business functions are checked for all the boundary boundary checks are done, negative tests are done, I mean, whatnot. Security is considered, performance tests are considered. Why I mentioned security has always been an afterthought in many organizations. Santosh is here, maybe as an expert, he can also add in to this. But security should be considered right from the beginning. And APIs are kind of like the atoms of the entire application. It should start from there is what I think. It can be better than that, but my understanding limits to here. The security and the performance of the APIs have to be discussed and implemented and tested on a regular basis. And all the supportive processes, right from L1 support to the within the team support and deployment support, everything is in place on Spot, which is like kind of like I said, a unicorn world. So this is stages of API test maturity. Identify where your team or the organization is and try to push it to the next level by doing the collaborative work and doing one step at a time. Now, by doing all these things, am I productive? Well, you'll start things rubbing into your organization. It starts moving. And when it's moving, you surely know you can identify the moving parts and how fast it's moving, where it's moving, what's the quality of the movement and all that stuff. And you'll finally reach to a place where you will be, like I said, the team-driven productivity starts self-defining within the team. So if I had to wrap up, I guess I talked a lot, but then we touched upon what productivity is, and then we touched upon the layers of the responsibility of how this can be tackled, the DIC challenge of the API in its own, and then the API test maturity model. So we touched upon all these things. I'm opening the floor for any questions. If you have, just like bounce at me. I'll try to take it as much as I know, else I'll pull in some experts here already.